Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond Recovery. My name is Matt, and I have a special guest today. His name is Flindt Anderson, founder of PAIN, Parents and Addicts in Need, a non-profit organization out of Fresno, California. He is also the host of the podcast known as Don't Hide the Scars. Flindt, how are you today?
I'm good, Matt. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. Lots to talk about, and we have a mutual friend, Jason from the Knocking Doors Down podcast. Shout out Jason. He kind of helped hook this up, and I'm really happy to have you on here. And just really admire the work that you're doing with your organization and such. So let's jump into it. I do want to get into your personal story, but before we do, tell all the listeners about what you have going on with PAIN. And by the way, worth touting, you guys got I believe the California nonprofit organization of the year in 2021. Is that correct?
Yes, we did. We were. Yeah, that was a total surprise to me. That's. I mean, all of a sudden, one of our local assemblymen called me and said we got it, and I was actually on the golf course, and I about fell out of my golf cart. I mean,
tremendous. Well, congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, PAIN is, look, I started it in 2009. And, I always start out by telling people this is something I did not want on my resume. I remember sitting at Betty Ford back in 2001 and, everybody in treatment, it seems like they all want to be counselors, in that last week that they're there. And they're going to save the world. They're going to go out and do all this stuff. And I'm looking at these guys going, are you all nuts? I mean, that's the last thing I wanted to do, Yeah. So, but as luck would have it, so to speak, a friend of mine and I, we started talking about this in 2008, something that I just kind of wanted to go out and tell my story again, like everybody else, to pass it along, to help somebody else. And before you knew it, we formed the nonprofit, got the nonprofit status. It took about, good 4 or 5 years before we really got rolling with things. A lot of hard work, a lot of footwork. Starting a nonprofit is not easy. And I'll be honest with you, if I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't. So, you just kind of fast forward to today, and we've seen somewhere around 8,000 families in the Central Valley since our inception. We've sent well over 5,000 people to treatment in that time. We provide family support groups on Wednesday nights that are totally different than Al-Anon and any of those groups. And I love those organizations. They have their purpose. They serve a vast number of people. But with mine, I wanted to be able to crosstalk and to give advice and to give suggestions. And because as the recovering addict, now I can get across to parents what their loved one is capable of and not capable of doing. I'm kind of known as the hard ass around the area because I take it very serious. There's no time to waste. Especially with the drug culture today, we really don't have much time to waste. And, and again, we started our podcast and we got that going. And, I speak all over on the opioid crisis and just kind of do whatever we can to help the next person and to get the message out there to all communities across this country of what mess we're in right now.
Right. And I remember you and I had a conversation, I want to say about a month ago or so, and just kind of, getting to know each other a little bit. And I got the impression that especially your podcast and everything is very much like it's a hub of information and, getting the information out into just the I guess, normal Joe Blow public, for example, of just like, and a different take on perhaps what the news is, presenting, right? The reality of it. And just like and you're having folks like police officers and such coming on the show and just really helping to spread the word and being a resource like that. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. It's interesting you brought that up because we're doing another town hall meeting this coming Thursday here. And the news station sent me over an email saying, what 5 questions would you like our people to ask you during this town hall meeting? And man, I gave them 5 questions that normally news people are not going to ask. right, because enough of the sugarcoating business here.
Right.
We got people dying of all ages because of fentanyl, and this is no longer, I mean, look, and I want to say this, I don't claim to know everything here, because I don't. But you know something, Matt? I've been talking about fentanyl for the last 6.5, 7 years. You could see this coming. And so one of the questions that I want the news to ask me, of course, is why didn't we see this coming?
Right.
And I want to respond by saying, I've been telling you it's been coming. But here we are.
Yeah. Right.
And we're in trouble.
My apologies. My dogs are probably announcing that the mailman is here.
I
so
love
my
that.
apologies for that.
I love that.
Yeah. So they're saying hi. You know what? The fentanyl thing is just, it's crazy. I honestly, I didn't have as much information as I needed, about this. And I'd actually interviewed a wonderful lady that's doing some tremendous work that had a fentanyl overdose, and she gave a lot of info, filled in a lot of blanks for me on this. And I'd love to hear what your take is on, the fentanyl and why it has become such a problem and all that. My impression that I got from her, she was going to the streets to get a certain type of painkiller, and she was mentioning what had happened to her is that when the folks that are creating these are creating the pills, there is no, like, for example, one pill might get amount that will kill you, and then the other one gets very little as a result. So the way that they're pressing the pills, it's not in a safe manner or a particular, manner. Right. They don't necessarily care about their clients at this point, right? These peddlers of drugs. And she ended up getting one of those pills that was really full of fentanyl, or the rest of them perhaps didn't get as much. And I was like, wow, that's okay. That is, because to me, before I was just like, okay, well, why are people even doing it? And now I'm realizing, okay, well, as soon as she filled it in, and it was such a much more sympathetic story, and I was like, wow, that is just insane. That's a thing. So yeah, that was just my first, tip of the iceberg as far as like learning about fentanyl. But yeah, what can you tell us about this and your experience?
Sure.
With it?
Sure. First of all, people need to understand the addictive qualities of opioids in general. And, that was my drug of choice. And at the end of, I had just a small 23-year addiction to opiates. I also had 35 surgeries in the course of my life. So my brain chemistry has kind of been screwed up since the day I was born, because it was all the result of a birth defect that I had.
Okay.
But just to get back to fentanyl, people don't understand the addictive qualities of these drugs, whether it's a regular opioid or as strong as fentanyl. You can become dependent on these things in as little as 7 days to 2 weeks. And so there's a difference between dependency and actual addiction. Dependency is still that, okay, I'm going to go to the doctor and he's going to continue to give me my supply for 30 or 50 or whatever it is every month. And I'm going to continue to take those as needed. But the nature of the beast with opioids is that it only lasts for a short amount of time, and you have to continue taking more and more in order just to feel normal. So at the end of my using, and again, a lot of people go, well, gosh, why aren't you dead? And yeah, that's the question. I was taking between 70 and 80 Vicodin every day the last 2 years of my using. And if there were more, I would have taken more. But at that point, of course, we're just taking them so we don't get dope sick.
Right.
And so people don't understand that. It's very difficult for people to even get their head around that, from time to time. So now you throw fentanyl into the issue, which is 100 times stronger than morphine. And I'm just going to be honest with you. The high is incredible. Okay. It is incredible. If you've ever had a colonoscopy, if you've ever had any type of surgery, that is what they're giving you in the hospital with a combination of other drugs to knock you out.
Okay.
So it is an enormously powerful drug. And you just want it again. I mean, it's even hard to explain. You just want that feeling again.
Yeah, right.
But the drug cartels, the drug dealers, the drug runners, all of them, they are manufacturing this stuff basically in bowls and adding quinine or baby powder, whatever it is, and they press them into what is called an M30 pill. And I'm sure that's what that lady was talking about.
Right.
And you're right. A lot of kids in particular, they will split that pill into quarters on a Friday night and give it to, one of their friends. They may get the amount that doesn't have anything in it. They're going to get the quarter that's got it all in it, because these idiots don't know how to mix the dosage properly.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're not waking up.
Man.
Yeah,
It's so incredible. Yeah, it's so frightening. And like you say, so you've been following this story basically since its origin, essentially, is in your area, anyways. You're lifelong Fresno, correct?
correct.
Okay. And so 6.5 years, man, this has got to be so incredibly frustrating for you to have witnessed this. And this is what has created this, what you say is the hard ass, right? At this point, you're
Right.
just like, what more can like, how many times do I have to put up my hand or say that I've seen this coming or I've seen this going on? So I imagine that's what has created this hard ass, identity that you have with this.
That is correct. Matt, and I think there's something else that comes into play there as well. I don't want to say I'm getting older and I'm getting grumpier in my old age.
Yeah.
There might be a little bit of that,
A little bit.
but the fact is I'm tired of seeing families ruined. I'm tired of going to funerals. I'm tired of seeing the number of deaths that are arising because of this. And there is some frustration in when dealing with families,
Mm.
and I'll just say it in this way. Parents, they shouldn't think that their kid's going to grow up to be a drug addict. That's not in the parent manual, and right. And but the fact is, kids experiment. I don't care what generation you grow up in. Kids do couple things really well. They lie. Every kid lies. And I'll occasionally get that parent that goes, well, my child tells me everything. And my response to them is, that's crap. Okay. They don't tell you everything. Kids have that Superman complex. It's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
I've seen kids selling pills at another kid's funeral. I mean, it is, and I'll tell you the one thing, and I'm going to go off just a little bit here, because I was watching Woodstock 99. Have you ever seen that?
No, my fiance and I were just talking about that. She's watched it and she was just floored how just ridiculous it was and how much of a gong show it was.
Right. I was floored. No, I grew up in Woodstock 69. Okay. And first of all, how they even thought that this was going to be Woodstock 69 is beyond me.
Yeah.
But my point to that is, you had a couple 100,000 people, if not more, and damn near every one of them were high on something.
Mm.
That's your children, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can't tell me that your kids aren't going to experiment. They're not going to go crazy. They're not going to do things that young people do. And all I'm asking is for parents to get educated, get knowledgeable, wake up, and understand what this epidemic is. Because look, I've dealt with enough parents that have lost children to this. That's the last place as a parent you want to be, because they're not coming back. There is no second chance here. There is no, oh, please wake up, please wake up. No, it doesn't happen that way. So that's the frustration part of me, that people aren't, I don't want to say not everybody's taking it serious, but the general public, I really don't think is taking it that serious.
Yeah, and and that's exactly what the podcast and your organization is all about, is getting that information out there, and you do it with such passion and conviction. I can really tell that this has been affecting you for a while, and this is something that is your calling. It is something that you're compelled to do these follow-ups with, and you're talking a lot about families and all that kind of thing too, right? Let's get into your story, your family, how you got to this stage with your life. You touched on it a little bit at the very beginning. You said jokingly 25 years of an addiction, right? Only 25 years. So
Oh,
let's get into it. I know on your bio you mentioned you had your first drink around 13. I don't want to spoil any more for it. Take it away if you can. What is your personal story, Flindt?
sure. Well, first of all, I was born with an ailment that caused me to have a surgery a year from the time I was born till the time I was 13. And excuse me. And then I had four more in 1976. And so I was on some sort of opioid medication. Now, not the entire time, but
Mm,
while I was in the hospital, obviously, when I got home, I was given pain medication. So my opioid receptors were a little screwy to begin with, going into my teenage years and into high school. Um, I was one of those guys that was I call myself a man of many talents and a master of none. Um, Look, I grew up in a great house. I mean, I had everything that I wanted. Played sports. I was a music major at Fresno State when I went to college. But I also was one of those guys that when mom said, "Don't touch that stove, it's hot," I'm gonna touch it just to make sure. So when I had my first drink at 13. I probably had something even prior to that, but I really don't remember. But then of course high school hit, and pot was just all over the place in those days, and I was still taking the medications, but not a lot. But then I got into my cocaine years, where I thought I was Pablo Escobar half the time, and trying to get through, and while playing sports, while in music, just doing, drugs the entire time. So when I got to my early 20s, I was pretty much on my way. You know, my addiction took me to some places that were pretty dark. And in those days, it was really easy to doctor shop. So
mm,
I had 12, 13 different doctors' offices going at one time.
wow.
Pharmacies weren't connected. Doctors' offices weren't connected, so nobody really knew what you were doing.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
was I
yeah.
was forging prescriptions. I actually got caught by the DEA doing it. Yeah, it wasn't good. Again, but I got married at 24. I'm still married to the same woman, which is just amazing in itself. She's an absolute saint. Although I was kicked out on several occasions. You know, Look, it was the things that I did during that time were, I got away with murder, basically.
Mm,
Um, I got away with a lot, and I don't know why. You know, for example, I would go into, we live in Central California. I would tell my family that I had to go work down in Southern California, and I would drive down to Tijuana. And this is all pre 9/11 stuff.
right.
And I'd stick a gun, 9mm behind my pants. I'd walk across the border. I would go and load my pockets up with whether it was Vicodin or Soma, any type of benzo that I could buy in the pharmacias down there. Walk back across the border. Didn't care if I got shot, got busted, nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just on this kind of wild rampage.
you're right.
Um, and then I'd mix that with the cocaine. I was even moving it and selling it in those days. So Matt, it's a lot of it. I have to say, I have very short memory
Mm,
of what
mhm,
happened,
mhm.
but because of my addiction, and people don't realize this either, the older you get, a lot of that comes back to haunt you. And what I mean by that is physically. So I've had 2 open heart surgeries because of it. I literally have a whole new set of teeth in my mouth.
Mm,
And again, that wasn't because I didn't brush my teeth. I just lost them. Diet, smoking, the opiates, the cocaine, whatever it was. It has such an effect on us physically that because we're not thinking 20 years ahead, you know, we just don't. So I've had my fair share of, but right now I'm healthy. I mean, I don't know. I can't figure it out. I don't think, in fact, I walked into one doctor with my heart doctor one time. I see him about once a year. And every time he goes, "You're not dead yet," and I go, "No, and you're short,"
Yeah. Yeah.
so
There you go.
there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so again, it was the things I did to my family. I wasn't physically abusive, but I certainly was verbally abusive. Spent everything. I lost it all. We actually had I'd lost a house that the kids and my wife grew up in, and we had, and we leased a place back in, and this was in sobriety. Okay, this was about 2006.
Okay.
And because I caused so much wreckage and financial damage, that we had a house fire in April, actually, of 07, and it was arson. And my wife happened to not be home. I happened to not be home. My kids were out of the house by then, and it burned to the ground.
Wow.
And they did find out it was arson. Now, was that an old drug deal gone bad? Somebody I pissed off in those days? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, it was pretty eye-opening, and so we had to start all over again, just all over again. So people don't really understand the ramifications of our use and the behavior that goes with it. As addicts, we have a tendency to, it's all about us. It's all, we don't care what the families are thinking, and we don't even know we're putting them in danger,
Right.
And we do that. And again, I'm a pretty lucky guy. I had to make a lot of amends, and work in those 12 steps, man. That is critical. It's key in our recovery. But when you get clean and sober at 45, it's you either do or you don't, at that point. And I remember walking into my best friend flew me down to the Betty Ford Treatment Center, and that was my third one. And he simply looked at me and said, "Look, man," he goes, I love you. He said, "and nobody wants you right now." He said, "and if you ever wind up in the hospital due to your drug abuse, I will never, ever talk to you again." He goes, "Do you get that?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I do." And he turned around and gave me a hug and walked out and said, "I'll see you in 30 days. And that started that road to recovery. But those first 3 to 4 years, I'll tell you, man, it's tough. Okay. It's tough because we have to change everything about us, but we can't do it all at one time. You want to change everything as quickly as you possibly can, but you can't. And so you have to learn. That's why the steps are important. It's not a foot race to the steps. Okay. Right. Even today, I'll bet you $1 to a dime that I apply a step somewhere unconsciously every day in my life to something, right? Because I was diligent. And again, I'm not trying to blow my own horn here, but I was diligent in working those steps. I was diligent in working with my sponsor. I was diligent in telling the truth, no matter what it cost me, no matter what it cost me, because I didn't have a third, fourth chance anymore. Right. I just didn't have it. Yeah. This is what I tell people. I have another use in me. I don't have another recovery in me.
Yes. Powerful. Yeah.
Because it's too damn hard. If I go out and relapse today, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
So I also say this to folks, because I know a lot. And again, I love everything about AA and NA, but they talk about doing it for yourself. This is important. Yes, we have to do it for ourselves, but when we do it for others, especially our families and those that love us, that has a tendency of healing our own hearts. Because why wouldn't we do it for somebody that loves us? This is no longer the Flindt selfish person. I want to do this for other people because those people care about me. And if I don't, I'm still a selfish asshole. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a pretty simple, SOB, so I got to keep it that way.
That's, it's powerful though, and it makes sense into the work that you're doing now, and why families is such an important part of the people that you're working with. You're calling upon families. You're working with entire family units, not just the person. There's like the full context, the full, family picture that comes in, and shout out to your wife for being with you for all those years, right? And for all these, like, honestly, that's wonderful. So I can only imagine that is why that's such a core value of yours. And yeah, absolutely. To your point, in my own recovery story, as soon as I was like, I was able to do it for myself, yes, and the change had to come from within, but I anchored that to, a tribute to my dad who had passed away, and I was on that same path as him. He passed away at 66, he being a heavy drinker. So as soon as I combined those two, all of a sudden that was the winning combination, right? When they have like a couple of things that you can combine, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now here we go. Now it's on, right? So
Right.
yeah, really cool. Jason asked me to ask you to tell me a story. I think it was on I want to say it was like your third time perhaps to going to the Betty Ford Clinic or something like that. There was a really entertaining story. I had it scribbled down on one of my notes. Of course, I can't find it. Is this cueing you for anything? Are you remembering the potential story here, or am I
It's
totally putting you on
it's
the spot?
it's not, because there was a few stories that came out of that place.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. There's nothing. Okay, yeah, exactly. There's nothing that came up. Unfortunately, if I had had it on my notes, I would have had a little
Yeah,
bit
no
more to that.
problem.
I'm just going off memory at this point, which
Sure.
unfortunately my memory is much like a fish. It's about 30 seconds long. So, in any event, one of the things that really resonated with me that you were talking about, and I'm just thinking of my own childhood too, is like you just said, kids experiment, and that's 100%. I remember myself, and even in this case, if like in today's day and age, if kids experiment, all it takes is that one wrong time, literally, and that is the end of their life. That's literally the game that we're playing at this point. It's not, of course, it's not a game. You get the spirit of what I'm saying. For
Right.
me, it was like the worst thing that could happen is like some marijuana was laced with a little bit of something. Don't get me wrong,
Right.
it still effed me up, but not to the point I'm like worrying about death, right?
Yes.
So absolutely. That's 100% the truth. Kids, what do you say? Kids lie and kids experiment. Those are two things you got to remember as parents, right?
They do. They do.
Yeah.
There was an interesting statistic out there that 25% of all high school athletes admitted to using a narcotic for non-medical reasons in the past year. Now, I
Hmm.
want you to think about that number. First of all, it's 25%. That's a high number in itself, right?
Yes.
But what about the kids that didn't raise their hand for fear of being caught or somebody suspecting that they're using something? Because what? Kids lie, right? So
100%.
that number could be 35%, it could be 40%. I
Yeah.
don't know. But when you look at numbers like that, again, it's not the people under the bridge that are with no teeth in their mouth that are dying. It's the kids that are sleeping two doors down from mom and dad, that are the high school quarterback, are the cheerleader, is the person, first chair violinist, the gymnast. Those are the kids that are overdosing these days. And then again, we have Narcan now. So now supposedly that's the big savior. All right, is Narcan. Well, look, in the old days, I was dead set against Narcan being sold to the general public. Now my tune has changed, or given to the general public. My tune has changed because of fentanyl. But in the old days, it was like, look, mom and dad, you're paying for the kid's phone, his car, his insurance, his food, his clothing, the this, the that, the other thing, and you're allowing him to use heroin in your house. And now you want Narcan in your house, so in case he overdoses, you can save him. I said, why would the kid want to ever get clean? And by the way, can I move in? You know,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But today, because of fentanyl, of course, we have to have it. It's as important as an EpiPen or a fire extinguisher or anything else.
Sure.
But it's still a Band-Aid. Parents, excuse me, parents think that once they've given the Narcan and they come out of the overdose, that everything's going to go back to normal again. Well, it doesn't. Half of these kids are busting ass out of the hospital, okay, to go to the dealers one more time, because what does Narcan do to the addict? It wipes out all the opioid in your system. It throws you into immediate detox. So now you're jonesing, now you're going crazy, now you're shaking, now you've got diarrhea, your ears hurt, your nose hurts, everything hurts, you're aching, and all you need to do is get one little pill or one little line, whatever it is, okay, so you can feel normal again.
Right.
So as a society, we haven't planned anything. So what happens to that kid? They discharge him from the hospital, he's back out on the street in an hour and a half. Okay. Yeah. Those are the things I'm talking about that we're not thinking of as a society. Now you've got insurance companies. I have a treatment center. They're cutting people's time down. So you've got even somebody with alcoholism, right? We had a client was drinking for 30 years. They gave him 14 days, a combination of detox and residential. The insurance company did. They want him in and out, in and out. So again, we're doing a disservice. That's kind of my point.
Sure, man. It's some scary information, right? When you're breaking it down like this,
right?
So I'm looking on, on the pain nonprofit.org, the website. Like, what are some of the other services that you had? You touched on it a little bit there. Like, what other services do you provide folks out there?
Sure. Again, our family support is huge. Out here, we are one of the only organizations that do that. We provide education to schools, and try to get that message out to kids as young as junior high school age.
Wow.
I speak to universities. I speak to professional groups, women's conferences. We have a big conference coming up here in Fresno next week, actually, that I'll be speaking to, I don't know, a few thousand women.
Wow.
We also are Narcan distributors. So we train people on how to use Narcan, and we give it away for free. We refer people to inpatient and outpatient facilities. Like I said, I have a treatment center, New Perceptions North. Sometimes it's not a good fit for our treatment center, so we will send them elsewhere. Or if somebody wants just an outpatient program somewhere, and if it's not a good fit with us, we'll take. But I'm very picky on where I send people.
Right.
But prior to me having that, of course, that was one of the main things we did. We referred people to treatment facilities, and that takes a lot of time too. And again, we meet with families. I work with DEA. And Homeland. I go out on overdose calls with the DEA if they families. So again, there's a variety of things that we do here. But like I said, our main goal now, and as we grow and as I'm getting older, I still have that fire. I still have that passion. But I really like for the lack of a better term, kind of the media side, so we can really push this message out as just not only in Central California, but throughout the rest of the state and the rest of the country as well.
Yeah, I get that. That seems to be a huge part of what you're doing right now. And I imagine the podcast helps a lot with that as well, right? So that's wonderful. The public speaking, everything you're doing is so admirable. And, I just admire you and your whole team for doing that. I have one question that I've always found curious. And I understand it to a degree, but I'd still like to ask you about it. So when somebody's creating like a nonprofit and it clearly has it's going to have such a benefit to the community around it, why is there such an amount of like red tape and everything to go through to get to that? Is it just because they're worried that everybody is going to start these things up? Or like, why is it such a challenge? Because everybody I've talked to that has a nonprofit is like, they're like, oh my goodness, it's like all these hoops to jump through and all that. And I can understand it from one sec, but I'm curious to see what your take is on it.
Sure. I think that it was easier 13 years ago, to get a nonprofit. At least in the state of California, I know that they can shut down or have shut down anywhere from 10 to 30 nonprofits every year.
Oh, wow.
Because a lot of people will use that and take advantage of it.
Okay. That's what I thought.
That's why I think they're making the rules even tougher now. It's interesting with a nonprofit. If somebody's out there and wants to start one, my advice is, if you're financially sound, go ahead and do it. Okay. But if you think that you're going to just get people to start writing you checks, right? Because you're a nonprofit, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. If you
Gotcha.
think that some foundation out there or some that they're just going to dump all this money into your lap, it doesn't work that way. I mean, I don't think we got our first grant until we were like 4 years in, you know,
Wow.
because you have to establish yourself. You know, what's your
Sure.
mission, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if you don't have a mission, because nobody's going to give monies for salaries.
For sure.
They'll give monies for programming, for you know, for other things that you're going to do, but people just aren't going to start right. You have to prove yourself. So you're almost better off starting a for-profit but a charitable organization.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Right?
No, that's really good advice. That makes sense. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
because people, seriously, I've had people walking this on. Look, we charge a very small fee for our time to sit and talk with somebody. If they can't pay it, we do not bill them, and we don't go after them. We don't do any of
Right.
that. But I've had people walk in and go, "Well, you're a nonprofit. I'm not paying you." And it's like, well, let's see. One of our biggest hospitals in town here is a nonprofit. Have you tried not paying your bill over there?
Sure. Yeah, there you
You know,
go. Good point.
I mean, you
Yeah.
know, hey, buddy, do you work for free? I mean,
Right.
and I don't mean to sound like a jackass
Sure.
because but again, nonprofit just means different things to different people. And, you know, you got to have some tough skin if you're going to start a nonprofit.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, no, that's good. That's great. Great insight, great advice. So Flindt, as our time winds down here, what's like the easiest way if somebody's wanting to reach out to you? Where can we find you online?
Sure. FlintAnderson.com, PainUSA.org, PainNonprofit.org. You know, Flindt got at nonprofit pain or painnonprofit.org. I got painnonprofit.orgs all over the place. Again, pretty
Yeah,
easy to get in touch with, but
yeah.
FlintAnderson.com, that's probably the best place to get
Best place to get it. Sounds good, and I'll have that in the show notes. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. For me personally, I feel a little out of my element and a little bit, unfortunately, a little naive. So it's just to hear, what your experiences with this and what you're doing is, man, it's so inspiring. But on the one level of literally, it's inspiring what you're doing, but also inspiring me to take a little bit more curiosity with what's going on in my surroundings, right? Because there is a lot of this that has been, with my personal story, it's like alcohol recovery, right? So, I've had a little bit of blinders, to be honest with you. So, to me, it's also like it's really resonated with me that it's something that I need to continue to do some work on and learn more about. So, for that, I thank you.
Oh,
And
you're welcome.
thank you
You're
so much
welcome.
for coming on and being honest about your life experience and your story as well. And again, just thank you for the work you do. And, I'll be tuning into the podcast and to learn more off you and your organization.
Sounds good. Matt, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this. I mean, because I can be one of those guys that just kind of just has, I'm just going to talk, talk and talk. But thank you for giving us this opportunity to come on and kind of give our message. You're doing some good stuff, man. You're doing some great stuff, and keep it up. Keep it up, buddy, because we're going to have you on ours too. That's for sure.
I'm definitely looking forward to that, Flindt. Thank you so much. We'll be keeping in touch, and I look forward to our future collaborations.
Sounds good, Matt. Take care, buddy.
Thank you.